Very good. Well, good evening, everyone. Call to order this regular meeting of the Willow City Council for Tuesday, October 15th, 2024. It seems like fall has begun finally. Item 2 on our agenda this evening, our Pledge of Allegiance. City Clerk Amos Hoover, would you do the honors and lead us in the pledge, please, since this is your last official City Council meeting? Thank you. Thank you, Amos. Item 3, roll call. Amos Hoover, please, again.
Okay. Councilmember Thomas,
Here.
Councilmember Vaden,
Here.
Councilmember
Here.
Sprague will be absent this evening. Vice Mayor Hudson
Here.
and Mayor Hanson.
Here. Thank you, Mr. City Clerk. Item 4, changes to the agenda. City Manager Marty Brown. Good evening, Marty.
There are no changes from me unless there's any changes from the council.
Very good. Thank you, council members. Any changes?
Nope. Nope.
Very good. Moving on, item 5, ceremonial matters. Item 5A, we have a proclamation this evening for Fire Prevention Month. And Chief Monk, good evening. Good to see you. And I'll read this and then present it to you. City Willows Proclamation, Fire Prevention Month. Whereas the City of Willows is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living and visiting in the city. And whereas in the United States, the first presidential proclamation of Fire Prevention Week was made in 1925 by President Calvin Coolidge. And whereas each year during the month of October, the Willows Fire Department takes this opportunity to remind the citizens of Willows of the devastating impact fire has on each of us. And whereas during the year 2023, the Willows Fire Department responded to 103 fires, 632 EMS incidents, 60 traffic collisions, 14 hazardous materials incidents, 121 public service requests, and 19 mutual aid requests. And whereas this year's theme for the National Fire Protection Association is, quote, smoke alarms, make them work for you, unquote. Emphasizing the importance of ensuring fully operational smoke alarms are installed in the home. Whereas the majority of U.S. fire-related deaths, 4 out of 5, occur at home each year. And whereas Willows residents are responsive to public education measures and are able to take action to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. Now therefore be it proclaimed that I, Gary Hanson, Mayor of the City of Willows, on behalf of the City Council and the citizens of the City of Willows, declare the month of October as Fire Prevention Month and encourage all citizens to educate themselves on methods to prevent and react to fires. Proclaim this 15th day of October 24 and signed myself. Chief, thank you for everything that you and your fine organization do for this community. It's I'm very proud of the Willows Fire Department. City Council is as well. It's a fantastic organization with dedicated men and women. Almost all of it, except for 4 volunteers, just volunteering their time on a daily basis, day in and day out, not to mention our fine city staff as well. So thank you, Chief, for managing such a fine organization along with Chief Pruzio on the rural sides. Much appreciated. Item 6, public comment and consent calendar forum. All matters on the consent calendar are considered routine and are approved by one motion and vote unless council members or the city manager first request that a matter be removed for separate discussion and action. Individuals wishing to address the city council concerning consent calendar items or regarding matters that are not already on the agenda are invited to make oral comments of up to 3 minutes at this time. And as a reminder, please address your comments to the mayor and council members and not to staff or the audience. And another reminder, by state law, the city council is not permitted to undertake any action or discussion on any item not appearing on the posted agenda. First, are there any public comments tonight on any matters not on the agenda? If so, please approach the podium. Any public comment matters not on the agenda? Nothing? Okay. Thank you. The consent calendar consists of item 6A, register approval. Consider approval of the general checking, payroll, and direct deposit check registers. Item 6B, minutes approval. Consider approval of the September 10th, 2024 meeting minutes. Item 6D, support for Proposition 36. Consider approval of a resolution declaring the City of Willows support for Proposition 36, the Homelessness, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction Act. And item 6D, Office of Emergency Services portal-to-portal agreement. Consider adoption of a resolution amending the current resolution on file with the California Office of Emergency Services, also known as Cal OES, to ensure prompt and adequate compensation for mutual aid and pre-position assignments. Before we move on, just like to point out, Ms. Brown, that item 6D, there are two typos in that, minor typos, but they are the second whereas, Willows, and item 2 on the front page toward the end of that sentence. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Minor typo amendments. Council members.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item C from the consent agenda, please.
Councilmember Vaughn would like to pull item 6C. So done. Any further nope, requests from the council? No? Okay. Any public comment in reference to the consent calendar? No? Okay. We'll discuss item 6C. Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, sir. Hope I got my stuff ready. Anyway, it is indeed a proposition by the state through the proposition program the state uses. And I want to share with you all a particular concern I have over the functions of propositions. This one makes a particular statement that this one, when passed, created unintended negative consequences of great significance. The reality is that the state legislature is responsible for creating laws and actions and activities such as this. And it's been my experience over the years with propositions, especially where there was funding involved, that often what was sold through the media, through marketing of the propositions by the folks who were vested in their success and or those who were challenged by their passage, produced outcomes that were more media driven than anything else. I've seen proposition funding in the millions of dollars that, when funded and approved, ultimately ended up elsewhere. This mechanism is flawed, or it's got a lot of potential for errors. I'm not a fan of it. I don't vote for propositions personally, and I don't know that I can, correctly or effectively feel that I can tell anyone else that they should or should not support a proposition. And in this one, which has a wonderful title, Homeless, Drug Addiction, and Theft Reduction, has other things attached to it as well. And since the initial one was fraught with error and caused lots of problems, I'm not in favor of supporting this proposition as an organization, particularly since I don't know how we can speak for others when it comes to voting on these things. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Stumbled though I did.
Thank you, Mr. Vaughn. Any Councilmember Thomas, Vice Mayor Hudson, any comments on this item?
Not at the moment, no.
Can I just make a quick
I
comment?
feel like David said it, kind of where my concerns are, is where it's government spending, it's state government spending, and we have seen them squander our money.
And
Do I
we
like the
circumvent the
idea?
process is the problem.
The idea that it is behind this is a great idea. Now, how the money is going to be spent, the millions of dollars that it's going to cost additional every year is different. That's it. Sorry, go ahead.
Just to say that, frequently all cities in the state of California are asked by the League of California Cities, which is a membership organization, which we're a member of, and most cities in the state of California are members of because they lobby on our behalf at the state capitol. They frequently pre-vet and look at things about how they're going to impact or benefit cities. And they often ask us to pass resolutions in support of things that they think will benefit cities. Their sole purpose is to look out for the interest of cities. So when that comes forward, and I frequently don't bring ones forward because I ask in advance to see if anybody is interested in the council. Frequently, council members are not interested. This particular time, there was one person on the council that was interested. So I put it together and brought it forward. If the council's not interested in it, that's fine. I just wanted you to be aware, though, that we are frequently asked by the League of California Cities to support resolutions and to support propositions like this that they have already vetted through their attorneys and think will benefit the cities in the state of California. So I wanted you to understand that background when these come forward, so it doesn't just seem like, oh, staff is just bringing another thing forward. I get asked a lot, and a lot of those things I don't ever actually bring to you because I ask sidebar whether this interests the council, and most of the time it doesn't. So
Right.
there you go. Just wanted you to have a little background.
Well said, Marty. So I would be the council member who asked to bring this forward. And yes, propositions come forward all the time from the League of Cities. I mean, almost every meeting, how many, different either propositions or bills, Senate bills or Assembly bills they want us to support, on and on and on and on, as we know. David, I agree with you in reference to the California's proposition form of legislation. This state is absurd. And they all, how many, last count, I don't know if there were, like 60 clean water propositions. It's ridiculous. And it's in these goofy titles that are approved by the Attorney General of the state of California. And so, but this proposition is one of the few that I will be voting yes on, because it undoes, and I got a kick out of the way you worded that, David, because, with the legislation, because it's a bipartisan measure, in order to sell that, it's written the unintended consequences of Proposition 47. Proposition 47 was some of the worst law the state's ever seen.
It was a okay.
Yeah, and Proposition 47 is why these criminals are on the street committing crimes day in and day out. It's due to Proposition 47. This undoes some of that bad law. And that's the only, So I'm an adamant supporter of Proposition 36 to put the criminals back where they belong. And it'll just, and it's watered down, but I don't like the language, the unintended consequence. The unintended consequence, because it was terrible law to begin with. So anyway, this is a crime fighting measure. So that's all I had to say. And I mean, this is kind of out of our bailiwick as city council, obviously, but those are my thoughts. Counselor.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that as a former district attorney in the North State, that I would second what Councilmember Hanson stated, and also what Marty stated about the League of Cities. They have vetted these propositions for the specific purpose, and what the consequences or effects they would have on cities in California. And we listen to the League of Cities a lot for their guidance and their robust legal team that is very helpful in these situations. So I just wanted to back that up on the legal side, that certainly I understand your concerns, Councilmember Vaughn, about supporting or even rejecting support of any proposition. But in this situation, this is hopefully a small patch in the issues that were Prop 47. And Prop 47 basically gutted a lot of the crime fighting enforcement we had as prosecutors and law enforcement. And one of the reasons why I got out of being a prosecutor, in fact, because you can't do much in this new era. So I think that's what this proposition is really trying to address, is those consequences of what actually occurred after Prop 47.
Those smash and grab thefts in retail businesses, primarily.
Certainly, and really all of the thefts that happen in our small towns across the North State really go unpunished a majority of the time now because of Prop 47. So I think this is just trying to give more teeth for law enforcement and prosecutors to do their jobs and hold people accountable for the crime.
And
Just my 2 cents.
I do agree with what you're saying, because I did read the proposition in the Mr. Vaughn brought his ballot book with him. I did read what a lot of it said, and I did agree with a lot of it. My concern is that that extra cost isn't going to go towards our law enforcement and our district attorneys to fight these cases, but
Have a
to
jail.
a politician, to someone else's pockets. And they say it doesn't, but a lot of the times these go to private interests that affect some sort of a political standpoint.
And I'm not speaking to that at all.
I will say I did vote yes on this one because I do think that does need to be stricter laws. It's just unfortunate that that's the way our government has gone on a bigger scale. And so
Blame the player.
yeah.
Well, because our legislature's not doing their job. So, absolutely. Simple as that.
What I liked about it was it made it would accumulate the smash and grabs
Mhm.
into a felony.
Correct.
And I think it hasn't really hit us locally, but I see it going on in, of course, in San Francisco. It is what it is, but I think they need to get a handle on that and prosecute the crimes. If you don't prosecute the crimes, and that's what the cost associated with that is. I also voted yes.
And I will
No.
just conclude with my objection to the concept of propositions. My actual knowledge that money funded through propositions ends up elsewhere, documented. They even challenged the governor on several propositions for moving money over time I've read and know about. So, and to the extent that we'll need more court time and more officer time and more other time, that's that's an outcome of it all. If we could stop the law breaking, if that will actually do what it says it will do, then of course, I agree with what everyone here has said. I just think that the propositions for the most part are a very ineffective, misguided way to run a business. In this case, the state, the county, or a city.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
I agree.
Totally agree with you on that one.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's crying shame the states had to resort to the propositional form, just to battle the poor choices or inaction from our legislature in the state of California. So any further discussion reference to item 6C? If not, pleasure of the council in reference to item 6A, 6B, and 6D is amended.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Thomas has moved to approve items 6A, 6B, and 6D as amended. Councilmember Bodden has the second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Can I
Opposed?
ask a quick question?
Oh,
first?
yes. I'm sorry.
Why is C being left out of that?
We'll
Separate
vote on
vote.
that next.
Separate now? Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I was asking. Aye. Sorry.
Okay. Carries unanimously. Thank you. Sorry, Evan, if I went
No, you're
through the
fine.
discussion. I'm sorry, I'll slow down. Pleasure of the council in reference to item 6C, support for Proposition 36.
Move to approve.
Second.
Councilmember Thomas has moved to approve item 6C as presented. Vice Mayor Hudson has the second. Further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Carried unanimously. Oh, thank you. Okay. 4-0. Okay. Thank you, David, for your comments. Totally agree. Moving on to item 7, discussion and action calendar. I'll call for a public discussion on each item as they come up on our agenda. Item 7A, the Finance and Measure I Oversight Committee. The recommended action is to replace the former Finance Committee with the Finance and Measure I Oversight Committee, also known as FMIOC, and its bylaws in attachment 1. Marty Brown.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. The item that is before you is been initiated by Councilmember Thomas and Vice Mayor Hudson, who are on the city's current Finance Committee. Just backing up for a moment, I just want to point out that institutionally, the Finance Committee, which consists of 2 appointed council members, has been around much longer than before I got to the city of Willows. But I do not know the history of it, and not that we need to, but there is nothing in writing anywhere about the Finance Committee, what it is, what it does, its bylaws, how it operates, that we have been able to find as city staff. So I appreciate and applaud Councilmember Thomas and Vice Mayor Hudson for wanting to codify somehow this committee that's been a longstanding committee of the council. With that, and I'm sure both council members have something they'd like to say about it, but briefly, In researching how finance committees operate in other cities and trying to develop something for the council to consider in terms of bylaws, I realize that we also have Measure I on the ballot, and if that passes, we do have oversight requirements that are in the Measure I ordinance that is on the ballot for November 5th. And it seemed logical to try to integrate that oversight effort and requirement of the ordinance along with the rest of the guidelines and criteria and desires of the two council members that are currently on the finance committee. And so I moved forward trying to integrate both those sets of goals. And what I came up with was attachment 1, which is the bylaws, which is broad oversight of looking at, all sorts of finance related policies, monitoring and tracking finances, overview of budgets and audits, and scheduling basically 4 meetings a year. Quarterly meetings is what's proposed in the bylaws. In January, in January, April, July, and October meetings are what are proposed with different types of agendas. And embedded in that at various points are the oversight portion that's required of the Measure I ordinance on the ballot. I think it's very comprehensive. It'll also allows for the committee, whoever's appointed to the committee, to look at a variety of a whole broad host of finance related and finance policy issues of the city at the initiation of the committee. And it also allows for the possibility of bringing those policies and initiatives forward to the full council and having them participate and approve new policies and finance initiatives as well. So I think it's very comprehensive. And I mean, I'm not going to go into detail about the attachment beyond what I've already said, but certainly if you have any questions for me about it, feel free. But I would encourage both Councilmember Thomas and Vice Mayor Hudson to speak to their goals and priorities in developing the bylaws for this finance committee. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Marty. Rick, Evan, who would like to begin?
I'll let Rick start.
I'll start.
Mr. Thomas.
The Finance Committee in the past has been reviewing the accounts payable invoices and reviewing those. And in sidebar conversations over coffee with former mayor and council member Mike Murray, it emanated from parking ticket in Chico by one of the members of the council who was over there, and he wouldn't let the council member have the city pay his parking ticket. So they started reviewing each invoice going forward, and that's kind of the genesis of the Finance Committee. Coming from an escrow background, fiscal oversight, somebody looking over the shoulder to make sure that we have quality policies where segregation of duties, in the escrow world, I could sign a check, I could prove a wire, but I could not print a check. I could not initiate a wire. And so there was, I'm the president of the company, state of California, couldn't do certain things. It's called segregation of duties. I talked with what we had in the past before Joanne really got started. Marty held things together, but we really needed to have, I thought, some oversight and some understanding of what those policies are, to look at it, make sure that we have segregation of duties. That's from my escrow background. The other side of that was knowing where the money's invested and how it's accruing, not necessarily for us to be actively pursuing or participating in the investment of it, but I think we need to know where the money is and how what it's available. And looking at a whole variety of things that we haven't been looking at in the past. And so that's where we started with this. I think it's a good policy that we codify it so we can, going forward, that the future council members would have somebody looking over the shoulder, and we know what, and we look and know what it is. It protects our city staff, so we don't have issues of fraud. And we all, I can't remember the name of the town in in Colorado that had that big fraud that we all looked on the
I think that's Iowa or Ohio.
Ohio.
All the
River.
Queen's horses.
Yeah.
City of Bellflower was one of the best.
Well,
So I
There's
just
that
felt it
one
was
too.
positive that we would do this, and then in concert with that, with the finance, with the Measure I, and hopefully its passage, it sets forth when we will have our meetings. And I thought it was positive to be able to share with our constituents how we're going to track that, how we're going to share that information, and it works positively for everybody to know what we're doing up here on the dais and at city staff.
And also, we appreciate knowing what your purview is and not making it up as we go along, because that just creates a lot of confusion between staff and the council, and it's not super helpful. So I appreciate that. Clarity, it's always good.
So,
thank you.
Evan?
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
So a lot to line up with Rick, you know, this became about because we were looking for ways to make sure that we had checks and balances, right? And one of those ways that we started this was first starting off with our goals and priority setting. We got that in line. And this helps us with our main goal and priority, which is financial stability and responsibility. This shows that we're trying to be responsible for our money, for how we're spending it, for how we're using it, and making sure that we're able to show that in a clear image to the people that are curious, to the citizens of Willows. Excuse me. When I first came into this seat, there was a lot of talk about misuse of funds, and there was a lot of this and that thrown around about the financial situation in the city. And the goal here is to answer all those questions, to say, hey, this is what we have. This is where we're at. We're here to answer your questions. We're trying to be upfront with you and making sure that you guys understand where every penny's at. And then, like I said, it's a checks and balance, you know. It's a check before it has to come to the city council. It's a check on, you know, making sure that the employees are on top of everything, or if they, you know, potential oversight of something, which is hopefully never the case, but it does happen. We're humans. It happens to me at work too. I oversee something and I have an employee that's like, hey, did you mean to do this? Right? Or I do it to one of them. It's a checks and balance for us to make sure that we're looking over each other's shoulders and are there for each other. And the truth is anybody thinks that we're not running the meeting right, now we have it on paper as to how our finance committee meetings are ran and exactly what our procedures are for when we're doing those meetings. It's not a shoot from the hip. It's not how this is how granddad did anymore. It's got its rules and its regulations as to how they're going to be run. So if there's any question about it, we have something to fall back on now. So that's all I got.
I'd like to add to that, this committee answers to the full council, so we come up with determination of something that needs to be discussed. It all comes to the full council. We don't have the authority to tell staff to chase rainbows.
Correct. Yeah.
If that's necessary, it comes back to the full council.
Thank you. Let's limit the
Mr.
rainbows.
Button?
Well, again, we are doing something here that I hope the citizens of Willows understand and appreciate, because when we first sat here and when Rick and I ran for this office, there was the word distrust, mistrust, lack of trust. And the greatest responsibility I feel in this seat is my responsibility for their money. It's not our money that we spend. It's money that we acquire from the citizens and from others through various sources to serve the public and the benefit and the future of the city of Willows. So first of all, thank you for making this happen. Thank you for structuring it in a way that is very very common sense and efficient looking. At Thunderhill, we had layers of checks and balances. And I told people that we're not checking you to see if you're doing something wrong. We're checking you to protect you from any claim that you're doing something wrong. So the transparency, documentation, procedural integrity. I'm very excited about this. I hope that the citizens of Willows will look forward towards a really honorable city council and have respect and confidence and trust in the future of this city as run by the council.
Thank you, Mr. Button. Any further, Evan? No?
And
Okay, okay, very good. Excuse me. No, I agree with, I think this is well written. I do appreciate the fact that this will be a standing committee subject to the Brown Act with a posted agenda. I think that's a good idea. I only have one concern, and that's on agenda page 30. It's actually under section G, duties of the committee. Section G5. It states, be familiar, which I agree with. Be familiar with, approve, and review periodically the organization's annual budget, ensuring that the financial elements of the city are in accordance with the city council's strategic priorities. I have concern with one word in there. Be familiar with, I agree with that, like I said, with and approve. So the budget's approved by the full council, not the
Absolutely.
committee. So I have a problem with just that one word approved being in. I don't have a problem with any other word in under the duties or in line 5. See where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, to me, that takes,
That contradicts.
so on
kind
that word, that takes control over approval of the budget away from the council, could to the committee. So, and I completely understand, as a committee, you make, as all committees, you make recommendations to the council. So, and I just have a problem with that one word. That's all.
I
So
would
how
be
about,
fine with the removal of that word.
would we want to switch that to recommend instead of approve?
No, I think the
Review.
council needs to be fully invested
Yeah.
in knowing what the budget is.
I think exactly the checks and
finance
balances
committee
that
could
we want to
actually-
have in place.
Finance committee could actually clarify some of these questions before it gets to the council.
Oh, sure. Well, how about be familiar with and review? Just
Yeah.
delete approve?
Delete the word approved.
Of consensus for that. Okay, very good. I'm happy with the rest of it. I think it's great. And Rick, you know more about, since I've been on the council, I came on elected in 2008, the finance committee really the positive of having the finance committee as it stands, as it has stood since I've been on the council, was it was really beneficial for new members of the council to come on in their first year or two, preferably first 2 years, and sit on the finance committee. And it's an educational experience, reviewing the bills and the financials of the city. And really that, I saw that as the only real benefit. Reviewing the bills, we review the financials every month in our agenda packets.
Mhm.
We have access through the city manager. If we have any questions, and we all do on a regular basis, bombard our city manager with all kinds of questions, including financial questions, almost every week. And they get answered, but this is a structured way. So the finance committee, as it sits now, has outlived its purpose completely and did a long time ago.
Well, I think it
So,
just needs to do more than just look at the bills. I mean,
Right,
we'd
yeah.
need to look at the segregation of duties, how the money's invested. Because I've been here for 2 years and I really don't know how the money gets chosen to be invested. We're told where it's been placed. But how that comes to pass, where it is and cash flow stuff like that, that would be beneficial for me to understand. And I think any council member would understand. So there's a lot of benefit what could come from this in a council, in a formal committee meeting.
I agree, absolutely. I think it'd be a great solid committee. It'd be one of the it'd be a major committee. Go from nothing to a major committee assignment. Yeah, absolutely. And there's only one other question I have, Marty.
Mhm.
In reference to this, on the next page, page 31 on the staff report, section L, adoption. It says, this document is adopted by the city council on October 8th, 2024 by resolution XX 24. Wait, I see no resolution attached. Is there
Okay.
going to be a resolution?
Thank you for pointing that out. Right, because originally it was going to be on. the 8th.
Originally, I figured it's the previous meeting, but that happens. No, I didn't see a resolution, so.
Yeah, so here's what happened. When I created this, I really used another city's format as a template. And as you can see from page 1 of the bylaws, it's crafted a lot like a resolution and then it goes into the
Right.
bylaws.
It-
So one option could be that I can just create a separate resolution that goes in our resolution book. And the bylaws could be start with purpose and be an exhibit A to the resolution, like we've done, you've seen this
Sure.
before where we've done that. So this top, half would just be the resolution, and then starting at purpose, everything would just be exhibit A to the resolution.
Right.
Which is more the standard format. So I wrote this and got lost in the template I was using and kind of forgot about our own format. So thank you for pointing that out.
Well, like I say, it's in resolution format, but it doesn't store up to be a complete resolution, but this is, and Marty, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I
Counsel.
was just pointing out that it actually is already says attachment 1 is the bylaw. So I think that what Marty's suggesting would be the easiest way to do.
So turn it into a resolution and make it an exhibit A. And if you're okay just approving that, and I mean, basically, that's a pretty easy fix. And then that would be what you would sign is this first half. And this purpose bylaws would be an exhibit to the resolution attachment.
Very good.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you were putting this together about midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning as usual.
I
so-
did it over a weekend,
Yes,
actually,
as
like
you
3 weeks
do
ago. Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I got absorbed in their format and I thought, oh, this is a really good format. This is helpful. I'll update it and add the things that I knew that Councilmember Thomas and Vice Mayor Hudson wanted included and forgot about our own format. So, all
No, thank you.
right, I'll fix that.
To-
I mean, if you're
Right, and-
comfortable approving it as is, I'll just fix it and that would be what you would sign, Mayor Hanson.
Comment. Pleasure of the council.
Is there a
If there's no
motion?
Further discussion.
Is this a motion? item?
Yes.
An
it's
action item.
Well, since they both wrote it, I'll move to approve this, the finance committee with its tools and mechanisms for the, for the future.
So, Mr. Vauden, you're approving item 7A as presented and it will be converted, this will be an attachment as presented and
In the form.
ultimately converted into a resolution,
Yes, sir.
correct? Is that clear?
Correct, and we will remove the one word that I think you've all agreed to approve.
Yes.
In section G5.
Yes, that word was
Approve.
approve, yes,
Correct.
Removing
I've got it
approve.
here.
yes, very good. So, Mr. Vaughn has
Going to
moved,
approve the removal of
Is-
approve.
approve, remove, approve.
I would
Very clear.
second.
Very clear.
Mr.
I would
Thomas
second that
seconded.
motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Councilmember Thomas has the second. Further discussion? This will be a roll call vote, please. Mr. City Clerk?
Councilmember Thomas,
Yes.
Councilmember Vaughn,
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Hudson,
Yes.
Mayor Hanson.
Aye. Matter carries 4-0. Thank you, Mr. City Clerk. That'll be your last roll call vote, I believe. Outstanding. Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 7B, fiscal year 2025, 2026 stopgap financing options. Receive the staff presentation and provide any feedback. Based on council direction, staff will return with a recommended action after the November 5th, 2024 election, should Measure I be approved by the voters. City Manager Marty Brown, please.
Good evening again. So this item is really just to have a discussion item with the council and get your feedback in any direction. But it's really not intended to take any action tonight. As I mentioned quite some time ago, even if the sales tax Measure I passes and is approved by the voters on November 5th, there still will be a point in probably, late spring, summertime before that new sales tax starts rolling in, which the first check won't be cut from the state until April of 2025, that, there's a strong likelihood that we will need some additional injection of capital before really it's continuously coming in. And so I spoke with our finance consultant, Andy Heath, and our financial advisor who helped us with both our pension obligation bond and our certificates of participation for our sewage bond, and got some feedback and concluded that the best approach would be possibly to sell some of our properties and also look at really what's called well, basically it's like a line, it operates like a line of credit, but it's a tax anticipation note is what it's referred to. And there's a couple different options that we could go for, we could work through our financial advisor or directly through our checking, our bank, our main bank, Umpqua. So the interest rate would vary depending on who we went with and depending on the market at the time we did something like this. I think the first order of business that I'd be recommending though is to be, as the staff report states, to be disposing of the 2 residential properties that the city owns adjacent here to the south of City Hall and 1 residential lot. All the other properties that are in the staff report as an attachment and appraisals of the rice fields down near the wastewater treatment plant. I guess my recommendation is that that's a longer discussion with the council that would be part of a updated, excuse me, council priorities and goal setting process, because they are commercial properties and there are other options that might be available. And I think rather than just, staff coming up with an idea of what to do, coming forward with a recommendation and council approving it, I think it needs to be more of an iterative discussion, like kind of workshopped, if you will, because it includes ideas about the vision of the city and what the council and the community wants to see this community grow, because those are commercial and industrial and manufacturing properties. It's not just, in my opinion, and my staff recommendation is not to just come forward with a quick fix and let's just get rid of those properties without due consideration on the part of the council and thinking about what are the possibilities with those properties. Also, the other advantage of owning property, especially commercial property, but also residential, is that the city has the possibility and opportunity to act more like a developer. And what I mean with that is that you can enter into an exclusive right to negotiate, and you can offer incentives for development and have control over what goes on those sites to a great degree when you own the property. You can't do that with private properties, as you know, like Basin Street. You can't tell people what to do with their private property. But when the city owns it, it has a lot more control. And you can write down the value of the property, for example. We don't have a lot to give, but that could be an incentive that might be worth considering under the right circumstances and with the right partner. But again, that's a longer iterative discussion and not something that I would just bring forward with a quick staff report and look for your approval. On the other hand, residential properties, 2 houses, us being in the rental business, I don't think makes good fiscal sense for the city with our staffing levels and trying to manage. I don't see any value to managing 2 single-family households here. And I don't, the size of the 1 other residential vacant lot is quite small, and I don't really see advantages in the city trying to develop that residential property either. I think it would be challenging and an awful lot of staff, like work on the part of staff with very little return. So that's why the staff report focuses solely on the council's consideration for disposing of those 3 residential properties and then looking toward some sort of tax allocation note, which is basically a complicated way of saying a line of credit. And that way we leave our options open for only potentially going into debt to the extent that we need it versus some of the other options that are mentioned in the staff report, like refinancing and restructuring our pension obligation bond or a capital what did I call it? A capital taxable working capital loan. I mean, those are committing to longer debt and a specific amount of money that we don't know yet whether we need. So I didn't recommend those options, but I wanted you to be aware that they're out there. So with that, that concludes my presentation. I look forward to your discussion and feedback on this. Again, it's not an action item for tonight, but depending on what I hear from you, hopefully if things go well on November 5th, I'll be returning to you with some sort of discussion and action item after November. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Who would like to begin?
I'll start.
Mr. Thomas.
It would seem logical that rather than taking on the accruing interest on a line of credit, that we would liquidate some of our assets, namely the 2 houses here on Lassen. And I did some research. The vacant lot on East Sycamore and Yolo was acquired by the city through an action, and it looks to me like it was to foreclose and quiet title based on prior actions of a $27,000 obligation off that land in 1994. So some sort of action was taken by the city to repair a problem, and it equated to a sizable number. And in 94, the city sued and took possession of that parcel. So it makes sense that we would sell that and turn it into a taxed parcel. And hopefully somebody could build a single or a duplex on it. I don't know what the zoning is specifically for it. And the two houses. Having said that, I think that would be something that we should probably consider. At the same time, I think we ought to be looking at the tax anticipation note as an option in case they don't sell or don't sell for the amount that we think we may need or ultimately will need. So I think it's kind of a dual effort that we should be looking at.
Yeah, if I could just add, I always assumed you would need both, quite frankly. I don't think $500,000 necessarily from the sale of a couple parcels will be sufficient to bridge the gap. And my assumption has always been that it would be a combination of selling some assets and a tax anticipation note. And if I wasn't clear about that, I just don't think that's going to be enough to bridge the gap.
Well, I don't want to interrupt Rick, but what I wanted to.
I'm done.
You are, well, thank you. When does the problem begin? And at what level are we short? And how does it flow going forward till, I believe, April or first or second quarter, when we'll start realizing revenue from the sales tax increase? So what I'd like to see is where the gaps are and whether they, how we,
Well, So just, sorry. You
that's
wanna
okay.
finish? Well,
So it makes sense. It's like a cash flow analysis.
The challenge is that we don't know exactly what the 1.5 will bring in. We have an estimate we got from HETL, which is up to 2.3 million, but it may not the first year. I mean, I can't. So that's part of the reason I don't think there's going to be a silver bullet here for just sell assets or just one thing or the other, because I don't know if we're going to immediately be doing that well. At the end of this fiscal year, we're projected to have approximately $600,000 left in reserve. Starting next fiscal year, we're looking at a $1.3 to $1.4 million structural deficit.
Yeah.
The first tax doesn't come in until April.
Right.
So if you divide, if we were going to get 2.3 million and we divide that by 12 months, what are we getting? I mean, if you want to go to that level, what are we getting every month?
Somewhere between
About
650 and 600.
Okay, so by the time we hit July 1, we're still going to have a $500,000 shortfall going into to balance the budget going into the new fiscal year. And I'm not gonna, I can't come to you and recommend a budget that says we're running out of money in October or November without having a backup plan of like the line of credit idea. I mean, nobody, Andy won't do that. Nobody would in their right mind would come and say, here's a budget, it's not balanced and you'll be out of money, but let's just hope for the best. I just can't do that.
Yeah, I understand. But I thought this was stopgap financing. It's to fill a gap in time, correct?
Well, right, but that money's got to come in. And so what I'm
Understood.
saying is that we're still going to have a gap even after it starts rolling in
Sure.
April. And even if we sell the 3 properties.
And then we have those charts that show the general fund diminishing and going, where it's going to go. We have the expense line. So what I would like to see is a expense line, operating the city as we see fit, a revenue sign as it exists today, a gap line that shows how much short we are. And then as we consume the general fund, which is what we'll end up doing, where this other money starts to come in and how much we need to offset it. Because technically we need to be, we're not going to, this isn't going to fatten the general fund. It's just going to keep us above the line. Is that true?
That is true. And the point is to not accept is to, until we get a full year of sales tax, right? We get sales tax checks, once a month, right? Quarterly. So
Understood.
our first one will be in April, and then we won't get another one until July, right? So there's still going to be a gap in a full year's fiscal year
Understood.
budget. And I think that, I mean, I can ask Andy to generate what you're asking for, although if you recall, Councilmember Sprague asked for that before the approval of the June budget, of what it would look like, and he prepared that chart, and I'm happy to resend it to you of what it would look like if it passed, was what,
As long as
you know,
based on
the
real
chart that we're all
numbers.
used to seeing now, where it
Yeah.
looks like, deficit numbers, his table, he created a table based on if the sales tax were to pass.
Right. Cash flow.
It's a cash flow is what I'm asking for, is a cash flow analysis for however long you need to do it, whether it takes halfway through next year before we are on stable ground, because at some point we'll be on stable ground, more or less. Yeah,
Right, but again, we don't know how much we're gonna bring in. It's a up to
Understood.
amount right now.
I understand
so,
there's
I mean-
assumptions that will have to be made to give us this tool, because I think I could explain that tool. Here's what we spend, here's what we get revenue already, here's the gap, and how we're gonna fill the gap. We're gonna fill the gap by selling land, put the money in the bank and spend it over time. We're gonna get a loan. How long's a loan? A year, 6 months, 9 months? Those kinds of questions would be clear to me. I'm only speaking for myself. To me, it's a cash flow dialogue or analysis. And if I saw that, then I'd say, okay, fine. We need X amount of money by June 1st in order to pay that, meet that line. May 1st or by August 1st, or whatever.
Okay, so before bringing it back as some sort of discussion and action, assuming the
If
measure
everyone else
passes,
agrees, I could-
you're gonna need that additional information. That's what I'm hearing.
I think it's prudent to anticipate we're going, it's all budget based.
Correct.
So the problem with budgets, it's best guess.
That is correct.
So if we had an idea of what that cash flow and when we're gonna get short, so say it's August, we're out of cash. We need to make sure we have funded ourselves and secured funding for that time frame when it pops up. That's what it is.
Right. Well, and that's why we're having this conversation so early, because I'm not a person who
And
likes
I
to wait till the
appreciate
last
that.
minute.
Honestly, selling the land and putting it in the pot, my word, it affects that flow.
Correct.
So we have a general fund balance, we have assets liquidated that are now in the fund, we have whatever else, and then we have forecasts of revenue and forecasts of expense, and now I can follow it.
Okay, understood.
Mr. Hudson? It's a lot. So, sorry, from our last meetings, I thought that our reserves and our general fund would get us through until almost first quarter of the 25-26 budget. Am I wrong in that? Has that changed with expenses that have come up since that last time we went over that?
If nothing else happens and there's no sales tax, we will run out of money some point in fiscal year 25-26, and it'll be in the first half. We don't know,
Okay.
Andy and I don't know exactly when that's going to be, but it'll be before December, basically,
'Cause
if
right now,
nothing changes.
we're running that deficit about a half.
No, this year we used about almost $800,000 of reserve, I think, and see, here's the thing, you got to keep in mind that things keep going up, right? The sheriff's contract is scheduled to go up $330,000 next year. So there's things like that that keep jumping up. So while you're trying to get your arms around it, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but it's not necessarily seeing some other things that we're seeing. Our unfunded pension liability went up $100,000 this year. We're expecting it to go up again. So that's why, trying to nail it down is so difficult.
Mhm.
Now that's why the line of credit combined with selling assets, I think, is the best mix if the sales tax passes, because then we have some money also for emergencies. That's the other thing, is I always am constantly worried, and if Nate was still here, he could tell you, and Natisa, with those two in particular, when they come into my office, I can tell by the look on their face. It's a look of, I had to take the ladder truck to Sacramento. I think it's going to cost $17,000. I'm always worried that there's going to be some huge emergency And I want to be prepared for that. I don't want to say, well, we can't spend it because we're scheduled to run out of money in November and we don't have a plan yet. So, I mean, hopefully the council can appreciate being somewhat fluid and flexible in terms of understanding that
And I'm
I
understanding.
can't
of what
etch
you're
it in
saying.
stone
I-
for you.
I'm just asking the question, so I'll make sure I got my ducks in a. So with that, my question would be, if Measure I doesn't pass, what would we be looking at when it comes to what you mentioned? I mean, would you
It's
get
gonna
the,
be an
would you
ongoing
get the,
Conversation to be.
would you get the tax anticipation note before we know about the
They
ballot
will not
vote?
do that. They will not do that.
They
No
won't do
one will
that. Okay.
that.
So I'm,
There
So
will
it-
be no tax anticipation note if the sales tax doesn't pass.
it's essentially the line of credit that you're discussing.
That
right?
is correct.
Okay.
There will be the option to sell property, but those are all one-time monies. And I don't even think we could restructure our pension obligation bond because restructuring means kicking the can down the road, but where are we kicking it to? Because there's no, there isn't, I don't think any bondholder would let us do that. And doing the other option, which is the working taxable working capital loan. Again, I mean, that's something that you can do to basically borrow against your assets. But if you can't pay it back, I don't know who's going to give us that loan either.
Mhm.
Quite honestly, Vice Mayor Hudson, the conversation, if it doesn't pass after November 5th, will be 180 degrees different than this conversation tonight. I guarantee you.
Right. And the
Sorry.
whole idea with the tax measure is to keep us where we're currently at. So personally, I don't like the idea of us selling city assets. Okay, I wasn't okay with it when Forrest brought it up. I'm not okay with it now. I like the idea of the tax anticipation note. Okay, that makes sense to me. But as far as doing both, I don't necessarily like the idea of getting rid of property when we're discussing trying to bring back our police department, when we're talking about expanding, and potential expansion in the future. And then we're getting rid of the property that would allow us to expand onto that. So that's
Which property is that?
the 2 residential houses we have right next to City Hall. I do know there's a third one right there in between us and those 2.
That's
Right.
not ours, but I mean, we also own that huge vacant lot that is right adjacent to our parking lot
Correct.
on Murdoch.
Correct. And we have talked about putting parks in a couple of the different spots as well. And I'm just going to stick with the fact that I personally don't like the idea of us selling properties that we have if we can borrow against them instead. Because I was against it when it was initially brought up.
Mhm.
I'm going to stick to that personally. So. But yes, I do agree that, yes, we do need something to be done because, we need to be prepared for Murphy's Law, as you stated. Ladder truck goes down, our dump truck goes down, our street sweeper goes down. Something big happens that we don't have the funds to battle with, then, we're going to be in a different situation. So I do like the idea of the tax anticipation note, though. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you, Evan.
Well, let me, if I may, again.
Yes, Mr. Bud.
Every business in the world has unanticipated nasty surprises. So the possibility that we might incur some huge expense going forward is absolutely possible. And I accept that it is. So we plan based on some number of assumptions. And again, my idea of having this flow of money going forward that shows what we spend, we know what we spend, what we make, we know what we make because we're still going to get sales, whatever little minuscule sales tax and TOT tax. That there's the revenue, there's the expense, there's the general fund, and there's our alternative revenue sources, selling land, but borrowing money. And then ultimately this diagram would have the sales tax money jumping up with the receipt of the higher levels of money, as you say, starting out and then growing and hopefully growing and growing and growing. So again, I hope that it's not a difficult task, but I think it's really important because I know I would feel really good about seeing, that picture. I've seen the charts with the general fund and haven't asked about, well, where are we going to be at this point in time? And that comes up all the time. Where are we here? Where are we there? So that's really why I'm asking for it. I know
don't
it's a
think
tough
that's hard for
business.
Me to tell all of you that today, but don't hold my feet to the
Well,
fire on it.
hey, it
because,
doesn't
I
have to
mean,
be
I know what's
exact.
gonna happen.
Just by $1, we will not care. It's just a tool. It's just just a tool that I could see, and I hope others, oh, wow, we're really in a bad shape in May and June. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have to like, I don't know, but by July, or August, whatever, when does the TOT tax money hit? When does this money hit? Boom, 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 and we see it. Anyway, so I'll stop talking and ask that we try for that tool. And I hope we don't get any big expenses, but hey, everyone I've ever been associated with had that one lawsuit that showed up or that one dumb thing that happened, or two or three or four or five. I know that she knows how to run a business, and I know she's had trouble periodically, things show up. So it happens. Let's hope not. That's it. I'm sorry.
So if I may add, I understand that they may not give us as much as we want on the tax, I'm gonna call it the TAN. That's what you have it in here as, is the TAN. May not give us enough that we need to cover it. So I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to selling the residential properties or lots. But as far as the acreage where our solar is and the rice land, I would like to make sure that we do hold on to those larger assets like that for our future. Because our Measure I is gonna pass. We are gonna get that money and we are gonna be okay. And we are gonna develop and we're gonna use those lots and we're gonna want to do with them as we see what's best for the city, not a different developer.
Well, that's why I didn't recommend anything other than residential properties that are small and difficult to develop or already just have 2-bedroom, 1-bath houses on them.
And thank you
But,
for the heads
um,
up. I appreciate we're having this conversation at this macro level now so that when we move forward, we can have it in more detail.
Well, if the tax does pass, I have already talked and I already know to our banker that we can get a line of credit. I think the only thing I want you to also be aware of is that if it's not a mix and we save all the properties and it's just a tax allocation note, that money has to be paid back. And by the time we fill the structural deficit, we're only going to have about $800,000 to $900,000 left. It's not even the recommended GFOA's 17% operating funds. It's 11%. So I caution you about getting too far into debt that we then have to pay back. That's why I was proposing a mix of
But
things.
one of the nice things about a council of 5 or 4 in this case is that we could agree to disagree. I'm perfectly fine with selling the land. I don't know how anybody else feels, and I respect Evan's position 100%, but I'd sell the land in a heartbeat.
Well, I appreciate the additional input because it's helpful. You know, if I'm sitting here reading the tea leaves and then December 10th, I'm going to come back and say, okay, folks, and answer all your questions. Here we are. Here's what we need. It's helpful to actually know that I'm on somewhat solid ground on what I'm proposing and recommending. So I think I heard you, Mayor Hanson. I think it'd be great to also hear your feedback. I
Well,
think
When I chair meetings, I always go last. Believe me, I have things to say. I'm not shy. Have my colleagues get all their points out first. Sitting here, being very patient. Gentlemen, any further comments? I mean, and as always, we'll come back and then we have a call for public comments as well. So I just always go last. So anyway, I agree with some of what everyone has said. When Mr. Sprague brought up Evan, I agree with so much of what you said. The fact about selling assets, and I referred to it as a fire sale. Okay, let's have a yard sale in order to pay our rent next month. See how that goes. But I think it's just good business, and David, I agree, it's good business to have this discussion. This is absolutely timely. I am opposed to selling real estate almost exclusively except, okay, and Evan, yes, as you said, the 2 houses were purchased. I was on the council when that was done, just south of us for future expansion. Absolutely. Police and fire, or police or fire, future expansion. Okay. Keep in mind, we also own the property behind those houses, just north of Memorial Hall. We've had discussions before in the council, previous council, about selling those 2 houses. I was absolutely opposed to it before. I'm not I'm kind of on the fence about it now, the two houses here on Lassen Street. Yeah, why are we in the rental business? Well, we're making very little off of being in the rental business, but we're in the rental business because of possible future expansion. So, keeping that in mind, I would only be in favor of possibly, absolutely not in favor of having a fire sale. We have extensive real estate holdings in the city of Willows. We're very fortunate to have extensive real estate, holdings, especially in South Willows, especially with the 124 acres of property plus the additional 10 acres. That is so unwise to sell that ground. They're not making any more of that stuff. And we're sitting in a very positive situation, holding on to that property for future project, future development. That's a big wedge on our side there. For partnering purposes, for just a host of purposes. That's pricey real estate and going up, okay? And it is commercial development. That's future commercial development. We'd be cutting our throats to sell that property. Absolutely. The only properties I would possibly be in favor of would be the two houses here on Lassen Street and possibly that lot at just west of the cemetery. That's noted in here. It's Ventura, Wood and Ventura Streets. I would be opposed to selling the property behind the, what's now going to be the old Seymour Market, Bobby Lee's old building, which is now going to be Mercado Meat distributorship. That's prime. We've talked about possibly a future park there in that section of Willows, which doesn't have one now. That's a definite possibility. I think that'd be very unwise to even consider selling that. That little lot, and Rick, you mentioned that little lot over on Sonoma. That little tiny.
Sycamore and Yolo?
Yeah, Sycamore and Yellow.
Sycamore and
Yeah,
Yellow.
that's a property that we ended up with 1/1600 of an acre there over
That's
some
a
kind of
6,000 square foot lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
City lot.
Yeah, So I mean, that lot and possibly the two houses, but other than that, I'd say that's it. But that's just a possibility. But it's good discussion. I mean, it would be so unwise to sell our valuable assets off. And I'd be in favor of a mix also, Marty, as you mentioned. So those are my thoughts on it. Yeah, I think it's a good conversation. We all have a little different take on it, but now we're, hopefully Measure I will pass and hopefully the voters of the city of Willows will consider our future here as a city and move forward as a viable city with the passage of Measure I. And we very well may need the property here on Lassen Street for future expansion. We own the property. That's a big plus. We got the ground. That's huge. We're not going to have to buy property or possibly putting in a police facility. So, but just as one thought. So, but anyway, any public comment in reference to this matter? Anything? Public comment? Okay. Well, good discussion. Anything further, Marty?
Nope. Assuming the sales tax passes, you're going to see me again on this topic with more details
Very good.
and a firm recommendation.
Very good.
Could I ask a
And
quick
at the risk,
question?
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
On the,
Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
On the large lot that you have shown here, the 124 acres that we have south of town. Sorry, had my compass backwards. That has a sewer treatment plant and everything else. If we were to sell that, what would happen to those facilities? Would we essentially be renting them back from the new landowner, or how would that?
That's
work
a
out?
separate parcel, so it doesn't include the sewage plant. Actually,
doesn't?
no. This is,
Okay, I'm missing
don't
the
know if
lines
you're-
there.
yeah, no,
Sorry.
it doesn't include the sewage plant, so we would continue to own that.
Yeah, I think along those lines, I believe without diving into it really extensively, I believe that 10-acre parcel mentioned, I always thought it was 11 acres. Would that be the old burn dump? That 10 acres that's mentioned on?
I
mean,
don't know off the top of my head,
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
sorry.
Yeah, I just, right, yeah, I didn't spend very much time looking into that for obvious reasons.
It's directly east of the solar panels. So if you went out on that frontage road past the
Right, okay.
wastewater treatment plant, the solar panels, if you just kept driving past the solar panels, it's the next vacant
east.
lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
and we own that.
I believe is on, or if it's 11 acres or 17 acres, but anyway,
Is that, did you say burn dump?
burn dump.
I thought you said bird dump and I was like, I don't know. I don't know what that is.
Fire.
I know what you're talking about
Yeah,
now.
that
That
was
is
the
not
dump.
the same
That
parcel.
That
That
was
is,
the dump. Kid, that was the dump.
that dump is on the map directly south and adjacent to the solar panels. The one I'm talking about is directly east and
I got you.
adjacent. So, yeah.
Understand. Yes, it's contiguous ground, but it's.
Mhm.
we can-
Mr. Mayor, if
Yes, sir.
I want to revisit the idea that I would sell land. Appreciating assets on the balance sheet of a business or a city are wonderful. We should keep them. When liquidation of assets becomes a factor, it's only because you have no other alternative. I believe we are discussing a position in which we have no other alternatives, and therefore the selling of land as a way of meeting the shortfall is a viable alternative to me. So I think that's better than me saying I would just sell all the land. So
That sounds good. I understand. Understand. Very good, David. Thank you. Any further comments? Anything further? Okay. All right, Marty. Well, did you get any questions answered?
I did. I got everything
Okay.
answered that I need answered. I think I have clear sense of what I would be bringing back when the sales tax passes on November 5th.
That's. Thank you, Marty. If nothing further in reference to item 7B, we'll move on to item 8. Council correspondence. I have received none. Marty, am I missing something? No? Amos? No? Very good. Item 8B, city council comments and reports. Who would like to begin? Councilmember Thomas?
I attended a LAFCO meeting on Monday. There's an annexation pending with the city of Orland that's causing some heartache in that commission, but other than that, nothing else to report.
Oh.
Other than I certainly hope that the folks of the city of Willows step forward and study the ballot issue and vote accordingly.
Very good, Rick. Thank you. Mr. Bodden?
thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to compliment the handout or the door hanger that was put out in the city of Willows. Utilizing this particular tool, which was a quick reference point, and then following it up with 3 or 4 pages of material was just exceptional. I've gotten these things many times on my door and in the, I throw them away. And I admittedly am interested, but anyway, congratulations, awesome. I believe more people will have read this than would have otherwise had you not done it as well as you did. So thank the staff and anyone yourself for making that happen. Excellent. When the fire proclamation was done and I was reading here that we had 103 fires, 632 EMS incidents, 60 traffic collisions, 14 hazardous material incidents, 121 public service requests, and 19 mutual aid requests. What I wanted to know was how many of those occurred within the city limits of the city of Willows. And I suspect not very many.
All
Why-
of them.
No. A very large number. of homes.
Mutual aid is
We did
not
know
in the city
103
limit.
fires in the city.
So the rural department's classified under a different number usually. So when
Well,
chief pulls those
yeah.
numbers, he
My-
pulls those, he pulls those usually by jurisdiction and
Uh-huh.
usually doesn't combine them. Usually with the rural department, the city staff
Okay,
runs a
I'm
little
not
over 1,000
questioning the
calls. Yeah.
numbers. My question was, is we're going to get a $300,000 additional charge to provide police service to the city of Willows, and yet we provide all of this to areas outside the city of Willows. Why can't we charge for it? Why do we provide services to the county like that and get no money for doing it?
Well, so we have mutual aid agreements with all of
I know
our
we do. Why do
fire
we have a
districts.
mutual aid agreement
And
for
so that
police
means that
service?
when we need aid, they're here for us. And it's traditional in fire and police. I'm sure Mayor Hansen can speak at length about it, about providing, having a mutual aid agreement that you don't charge each other for. That's a pretty
get-
common understood thing. Now, if the council wants to do something different, that's certainly your
Yeah.
discretion.
It just, I mean, just wanted to share.
And
And last, oh, yes.
well, I would also add though that, I think to the great credit of Chief Monk
Yes.
and also all the other chiefs in Glenn County, they are currently working on a Prop 218 study to increase the assessment. It looks very promising. And so far, Johns Manville who has got the biggest number of votes, so it's about 25% of the vote, completely understands the need for that this current agreement that we have with the rural fire district, which they're a part of, and other districts, is really outdated and it doesn't have a built-in CPI, and they pay $84 a year, I believe, for fire protection and emergency services. So, I mean, I think that would be great if we lived in 1910, but we don't. So, to their credit, they fully appreciated when it was presented to them that, yeah, that this obviously can't pay all the bills. And I think that it's looking very promising that the districts together will be approving and increasing an assessment, which will increase the portion that the city gets with its contract with the rural district. I think that's really great news. As Mayor Hansen can speak to, it was one of the first things I zeroed in on when I got here, along with our relationship with the library. And it was sort of, a sacred cow, if you will. It wasn't really like, it's difficult to talk about those kinds of things, Prop 218 studies and increasing people's assessments for additional fire protection services. But Nate and I had many robust conversations in the first 6 months he was here. And I convinced him that we have a problem. There's a serious imbalance. And he's been working on it ever since for almost 3 years. And I think he, along with, Chief Cheney and all the other chiefs, I can't give full credit to Chief Monk, but I mean, together they have been working together to find a reasonable solution that is amenable to everyone. And I think they're almost near the finish line, which the city will benefit from. And so I think that's a really big plus and positive that will be a shift in terms of all the districts, paying their fair share for the
Excellent.
services they're getting.
Well, and what it addresses is that we focus on the revenue side of the problem as much as we focus on pinching pennies on the expense side or trying to cut service or do this or that to save money. Let's make more money. So thank you. And lastly, I wanted to thank Amos for his service. We had a nice gathering last night. It was fun and enjoy chatting and visiting with Amos. We're going to miss you, character. So I hope you have a good time in San Diego.
He'll come back and
Enjoy.
visit.
And thank you.
Any further, Dave?
No, thank you.
Rick, you want to go first or?
He already
you-
did.
Already
Oh,
went.
Sorry, I missed that. So a couple quick things. I actually have to look at my phone as it is in an email. I missed our meeting, the library meeting, but I did ask Jody for an update since we haven't heard a lot from me on that because due to work, I missed the last couple meetings. Friends of the Library had their annual book sale, which netted them $979 for children's services. And Zip Books grants have been approved for $6,000, so they'll be getting more of the Zip Book option for you guys, which is, I believe, I have to dig in my memory bank. I believe it's the one where you can sign up and you get the new book first
Correct.
before the library takes it over, which is kind of a cool idea. You get to specifically order the book that you want to get. And then once you're done reading it, you just return it to the library and it goes back into their stacks. Yeah, and then there was a couple other little things here. Looks like they're looking at some new legislation that requires some approval of some of the library's policies. So they've worked on getting those straightened up so that they met the new guidelines and things like that. And then I did have another interesting meeting with, and this came up from a call that I went on. And it was in regards to the GMC, the Glenn Medical Center here. I sat down with one of their staff and had a long conversation with them, just trying to figure out what they're doing, what's going on. It's no secret. They've had a reputation in the past. We get a lot of calls where people don't want to go there. It is a receiving center, so they are the first place that we have to take somebody, or the ambulance has to take somebody unless it meets certain protocols for that ambulance. What he was telling us is they are working on opening a telehealth with UC Davis. They're currently working on getting standing protocols, which will allow them to speed up seeing people faster. So instead of each emergency room patient having to go see a doctor, they get to go through their standing protocols. And if they meet those protocols, they get admitted and treated immediately. As well as they are currently in the process of getting their BLS ambulance up and running. And that'll be emergency transport essentially between hospitals for now. It will not be part of the 911 system, but what that will do, it'll allow the in-low ambulance that we have here in town to be here in town a little bit more often rather than doing those transfers. I think last I heard is that they were waiting on SSV and a CHP checkout, and they should be good to go with that. So those are my two updates as far as that goes, that I had to give out. And then the one thing I just wanted to say to David, when it comes to the fire service, the way that also works too is the city also gets to use the rural's rigs as part of they swap them every other month. So there is some give and take there. I do agree that we need to find ways to increase the revenue that we get from our fire department, which is why we have Engine 5. And hopefully, like they're going to be doing, starting Thursday, is going to be doing a prepo as well. And those are ways that we're trying to bolster those coffers for our fire service. But usually those calls that you're talking about that are mutual aids, those are ran by volunteers. And they are usually taking either a rural or a city engine. It's not necessarily just the city's equipment. And a lot of the equipment that we take is, like I said, if it's depends on the call, but if it's in the county, then it's a rural pieces of equipment. And it's only very few times that we actually take one of the city rigs out on things like that. So yes, there's a lot of calls, but they're not all necessarily taking up city personnel and city equipment time as well. So just wanted to clarify that for you and make sure that we were all on the same page. So that's all I got.
Thank you, Evan. Yeah, along those lines, you know, and I don't take it for granted just being in the, emergency services business for almost a half a century now myself. A lot, it's common. A lot of folks don't understand how that works, but thank God for you. Thank God. Because it benefits us, it benefits the other jurisdictions on both the fire and law enforcement side. And you can't put a cost on it because we all rely on help from our sister agencies. When the big stuff happens, and it does, and it will continue to do so, you just thank God for mutual aid in the public safety sector. But and when Marty got here, and to her credit, she came in here and she looked at the Glenn County, let's say the South Glenn County fire operation model, our 1958 fire model we worked under, and the library. It's like, what is this, right? Because the county of Glenn provides almost no money to our volunteer fire districts in this county.
Mhm.
Thank you, Glenn County, for providing almost no support, almost none. It's insane. Other jurisdictions around us have expensive fire contracts, very expensive fire contracts, and rightly so. We're very fortunate here to have Willows Fire the way it operates. The way it operates, and as Evan pointed out, the give and take from the rural side and the city side and the volunteer side. It's kind of like, and I told Marty, it works. Okay, it works. Don't mess with it. We had this robust conversation. Marty's not afraid to have a robust conversation, if we know. And it is kind of like a house of cards, but we have a jewel of an organization here, and it works for us. Will it continue to work in the future with increasing call volumes? No, not the current model, but it's not a safe model the way it is now with Willows running only with four career fire personnel. It's one engineer, captain, firefighter, whatever, one employee on a rig, on an engine. That's unheard of. I mean, it's not safe. But anyway, thank God for the volunteer component and all the wheels and all the technicalities to keep everything working and for the volunteers. But yeah, Yeah, and I know the rural district's working to increase the revenue, so. And they need to do more. And they are now, which is a great thing. But, anyway, I just wanted to touch on that, but, Rick and I, Mr. Thomas and I, were very fortunate to have participated in the Sycamore Park kickoff last Tuesday. Good job, Marty, and to your team, to Natisa, the Public Works team, who did all the heavy lifting, and you, Marty, doing all the heavy lifting, putting that together. It was a great event. What did you figure? 20, 25 folks attended, something like that?
25 to 30
Yeah,
that drifted
maybe
through
30.
over the course of 2 hours. Yeah.
You know, it was really, summer continues, right? It was hot. It was really hot. It was middle of the
It
afternoon.
was really hot. Yeah.
It's during harvest season. There's other things going on. There's football practice going on. There's everything else. But I think it was great. It was fun, you know? And, there was Caltrans, public information officer.
Which is why we had it at 3 o'clock.
Which is why.
So Caltrans would come from
yeah.
Sacramento and
and then
participate.
Rick spoke to Caltrans. It's a good event. Face painter, balloon artist. She's fantastic. She's great. And there were activities down there and well done. Very well done. And, today, or yesterday, I'm sorry. Yesterday we had, our monthly groundwater authority board meeting. I'll spare you the painstaking details, but extensive, did I say extensive? Extensive discussion on groundwater recharge. What I thought would be a light agenda turned out to be kind of like a Willow City Council meeting. It was a 3-hour meeting, like a 2-item agenda. But anyway, we're working steadfastly on protecting our precious resource of groundwater within the Glenn County portion of the Colusa subbase. Our work continues. Lastly, Amos Hoover, our dutiful city clerk. Amos, it's been a pleasure. It's
Beautiful.
been a pleasure. You're a good guy. You're solid. You're a good man. You got a lot of experience. Thank you for your service to our country and your very esteemed career in the United States Navy, retiring as a chief petty officer or master chief petty officer, senior chief petty officer, and E8, very good. And moving on to a career in the federal government, a similar career, however, not in the Navy. Are you working for the Department of the Navy? For the Department of the Navy still. Very good, very good.
Civilian.
As a civilian, yes. So, no, thank you, Amos. It's been a pleasure. You're a quick, steady, you're a very talented individual. You're also, I enjoy your sense of humor as well, too, to put it all in perspective. And you've been kind of like a ray of sunshine around here, so gonna miss you. We'll have a certificate of appreciation for you when you get your damn work done, okay? We're holding on to it. You still have some work to do, so,
Who do you think was the assistant to me before you showed up? Me.
anyway, yes, so, so anyway, and Amos, yeah, you will be missed. It's been a pleasure. Please keep in touch. It's, I'm proud to call you my friend. You're a good man. So thank you for everything you've done for us, and good luck in the future. And hey, if you want to come on back, pal. Okay, but please stay in touch. So, with that, I don't think any further, and I will not forget the city manager's report, item 8C.
Thank you very much. I have 3 brief things. One is that I wanted to acknowledge, I learned today that unfortunately, that our commercial properties have also been billed for sewage on their property taxes as well as their monthly bill from Cal Water. We are getting that fixed as quickly as we possibly can. The solution will probably be for the property taxes for commercial properties to be reissued their bill and told to ignore the previous bill. And we probably will just do that for all the properties because we're not quite sure if it happened to everybody or just some. And it's just easier, I think, to have the county just reissue them to all commercial businesses. So I do want to say, I think that this raises this ongoing issue of how long are we going to be able to have our sewage bill residential done by the county and then, commercial done by Cal Water. Cal Water wants to get out of this business. The counties said they will not do commercial because it's not a flat rate, it's volumetric, and that would just all be complicated that they'd have to get involved in that. So at some point, we probably really are going to need to look at other options for billing for sewage that hopefully will prevent these kinds of oversights like we're having today. So we'll get that fixed as quickly as possible. But in case you've heard about it or you do hear about it, you now know that we're working on it. The other item I just wanted to say is I really want to thank our staff, because in the buildup to November 5th, we're all thinking about it, but for some people, it's very personal. There are 18 full-time budgeted employees. There are actually 16 here now. It is on everyone's mind. It is tense. The anxiety is palpable. And I understand that. And I appreciate having as much as possible level heads prevailing. I think we're getting that, but it is, it is a tense time. People are concerned, not only for the city, but, understandably their future personal economics. And I really appreciate all their hard work and pitching in with all of these events we've been doing and the extra lift that we've been doing on educating the public about Measure I and the city's finances. It's been a lot of extra work, and I'm really grateful to all of them and want to thank all of them for their continued support, staying the course, staying focused on our day-to-day jobs, and not getting mired in things that can derail that when there's also so few of us. We're small but mighty, but we have a lot of work to do. So you're the only one here. Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And lastly, I want to thank Amos, who has brought a tremendous amount of levity and fun to City Hall, in addition to a tremendous support to me and all my work and all those special projects that I have for him that sometimes are almost more time consuming than actually assembling the packet and getting it posted. And there are a lot of special projects. So, yeah, it's going to be tough without you, but it's been great working with you and I appreciate your support. Thank you very much. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Marty. Well said. Yeah, we're very fortunate to have such a fine team here. Fine, dedicated team for City Wells. If there's nothing further, moving on to item, item, Amos says item 10. Did item 9 disappear? Moving on to item 9. There you go. There you go. The last,
Final correction.
It was the last screw up right there. I had to say that. I'm sorry, Amos. Next item, item 9, adjournment. Time is 7:33 p.m. Have a great rest of the week. Good luck, Amos, and meeting adjourned.